Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Christy Bonner. I'm Vice President of the DFW ATW, and we are thrilled to have you here tonight. I hope you're enjoying the session so far. I've heard from my colleagues that some of these other sessions have all been phenomenal. So I want to welcome you to session 11, where we're going to be talking about transformation, the most overused word in tech. If you're not familiar with our organization, thanks for coming tonight. ATW is changing the face of women in technology. Our mission is to increase the number of women in leadership and strengthen the pipeline of girls entering STEM fields. We do this through educational programs like today, and all funds raised from our event will go to our Great Minds program, which is a community outreach program targeted for young, underserved girls and help them become interested in STEM. We provide direct scholarships to send girls to physics and engineering camps, and we provide customized, tailored programs where girls learn leadership skills and advance their knowledge in STEM-related fields. So let's begin our session. While our speakers are presenting, please use the Q&A window on the right of your screen to enter a question, or you can vote on another participant's question that you're also interested in asking or hearing the answer for. We'll have a few minutes at the end of our session for the panel to address these questions. So let's get started. Now I would like to introduce our moderator, Sherif Mityas, who has more than 25 years experience in the retail and hospitality sectors in both senior consulting and executive industry roles. Sherif has been a frequent keynote speaker and contributing author to Forbes, Wall Street Journal, CNBC, and is a vocal supporter of personalized customer experiences to deliver brand loyalty and growth. He has also been a big supporter of DFW ATW and has served on our advisory board. Most recently, Sherif served as the Chief Experience Officer for TGI Fridays with oversight for the brand's strategy, marketing operations, technology, and digital efforts. I personally got to experience some of the very cool technology that he brought to Fridays with a visit to their test kitchen here in Dallas, and that was a blast. Prior to TGI Fridays, Sherif served as the Managing Partner for JS Consulting and as the Chief Executive Officer for Hollywood Video and Movie Gallery. So, Sherif, please join our stage, and I will turn the program over to you.
Thank you, Christy. Appreciate that. And thank you, all of you, for joining us today in session 11, Transformation, the most overused word in tech. And so I love doing these things, especially when I get to learn something. And so I get to be joined and get to ask questions of two extremely talented folks that we're all going to learn from this evening. And so allow me to introduce them and get these two impressive folks in front of you all. So first, I'd like to introduce you to Michelle Epps. Michelle is the Chief Information Officer and Senior Vice President of IT for FedEx Freight. Michelle brings her energy, passion, and drive into modernizing information technology, digital transformation, there's that word, and building technology. Michelle began her career with technical roles in IT, later serving as Director of Application Architecture, and most recently as the VP of Corporate Systems at FedEx. In addition to her management career, Michelle holds various positions on boards and councils and was recently appointed to the Board of Directors for Tech 901, a Memphis-based nonprofit dedicated to training and developing talent to place into open IT positions. Michelle also serves on the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Council for Wipro. So, with no further ado, please join me in welcoming Michelle to the stage.
Hello.
Hello, Michelle. And now, also let me introduce to you Paul Kennedy. Paul is the Vice President and Head of Retail Industry for Fujitsu Americas. And in this role, Paul is responsible for the sales and go-to-market strategy for the entire retail industry within North America for Fujitsu's digital transformation capabilities. There's that word again. This includes supply chain, engagement, workplace services, and solutions, both built natively within Fujitsu and created in concert with many of his partners. Paul brings more than 16 years of experience in the retail industry sales and sales leadership. And prior to joining Fujitsu, Paul held various leadership roles within Toshiba, IBM, and most recently as Director of Sales for the Western United States and Canada. So please, with no further ado, welcome Paul Kennedy to the stage.
Hello, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Now we've got the brain trust up here with me, so you don't have to listen to me anymore. So first of all, I have to tell everyone that's listening, all three of us have our dogs near us. So if you hear me barking, it's not one of us, just so you're all clear. Okay, so with no further ado, let's just start, because I read the bios, but I think everyone's trying to understand, Michelle, FedEx Freight versus FedEx. What do you really do? Can you start by just giving the audience a little bit more about yourself, your team, and your organization?
Yeah, I'd love to. So first of all, Michelle, like you said, a wife, mother to a 10-year-old who tests me daily, especially right now. A Memphian, which is a really cool part of, we talk about all the negatives of the pandemic, but I probably wouldn't be here in normal times. So that's a cool aspect of it. A technologist, a leader, and a FedExer. And so in FedEx, just like many other companies, we have lines of businesses. We just happen to expose those to our customers and put big branding on them and call them express and ground and freight. And so what FedEx Freight is, which is the division in which I lead the technology strategy for, is the less than truckload business. This is the LTL is what we call it. These are the tractor trailer trucks you see driving down the road when you used to drive, I'm sure. But these are the trucks you see coming down the road, and just that's that portion of FedEx, which is the overall ecosystem of serving the global supply chain.
Very good. Thank you, Michelle. Paul, I'm not sure. Some people would say they know Fujitsu. Some people are not sure. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your organization?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I had a client, a prospect, who told me this week that he thought we made elevators, which maybe we do. I don't know, but no. Fujitsu is actually a global IT consultancy. We're amongst the top 10 in as a global system integrator, number one in the Japan market. And we specialize actually in driving and helping our clients work through their digital journeys to transform as an organization. Of course, apropos to this topic, we actually as an organization as well are going through a transformation inside out, where we're working to modernize much of our business processes and operations and transition our business activities from primarily IT infrastructure and services to more enterprise digital capabilities, both in the internal and external domains. So I use the word transform quite a bit every single day, as you can imagine. I kind of need an intervention. So hopefully in this panel, I'll learn some new words to use that I can start putting to good use in my daily life.
So Paul, this is all a ruse. We're really just here for your intervention.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Perfect. Well, let's get to it. I mean, transformation does seem to be a word that everyone uses, right? But beyond being, I think, overused, I don't think it actually is accurate most of the time. I mean, we've all led changes within our own organizations, and I'm sure we all find that the words are important, right? How we communicate, how we do the work, can be the difference between success and failure. So as you look at each of your own individual organizations and the efforts you are currently leading, how do you think about this transformation? And is it really getting from, getting to caterpillar to a butterfly? Is it getting from point A to point B, or is this more of a journey, kind of a continuous path of improvement of products and services and experiences for your customers and clients? Michelle, what do you think about all this?
Well, as the person who recommended this topic, I think I feel the need to confess that I used the word. It was in my bio, right? And that right. was a big reminder to myself in that. But I think the thing is, I don't believe in it. And so when we say complete transformation, what we're really saying is we want something different than we have today in our current state, but I'm not exactly sure what that difference is. And I think what we want to do is we want to signal that things are shifting. I'll demonstrate. If everyone could close your eyes for a minute and allow me. When I say this statement, I want to lead a complete transformation to the tech industry that would change the way we work and make it more inclusive for women. Are you with me? I mean, I don't think there's anyone in here that's going to say no, but do you have any idea what I'm actually thinking about and what I'm enlisting you to do? And I think that's as leaders, what we do is we want to signal. We want to signal we want something to be different. And so what I would encourage us to do is get past the word. We can start with it if we really need to and to hold our security blanket, but then get past it and really take the time to put the context and the words around it. I think that's the powerful piece of this, is describing what that next point is. And to your point, Sherif, it's not about point A to point B. It's this journey that we likely need to go on, that we might not know exactly what that endpoint is. And as soon as we get there, even if we were so magical to be able to describe it, it's going to be something else as we do that. I like to reference, have you guys seen the children's book Zoom? Has anyone seen that? It starts out with this picture of this rooster, and then you turn a page and you turn a page and you turn a page and you find out you're actually in a puzzle. But by the end of the book, you're in space. And I think it's a great book for leaders to remember is, where are you on the journey? Where are your teams on this journey? Where are you in the Zoom cycle? And making sure you really have that context. And so building that North Star is super important. And I think that's what we do. And it's inspirational and it's great. But then how do you move past that conceptual piece really into the brass tacks of what we're talking about, and build a mental model that's shared that really allows us to change the way we work? And I think that's what's powerful about this and this journey, and focusing on not what we're going towards, but more about how we're doing this and doing it in a resilient way. I mean, that's what's magical in this journey. And I think that's really what we're asking when we say, can we do a complete transformation on this? So that's really where my head is.
That makes a lot of sense, Michelle. Thank you for that. And Paul, I think, you have a slightly different, because you're not just talking to your team members or employees. I mean, you're talking to clients as well, right? And I'm sure your clients are always using the word, get us from here to there, right? I mean, how do you transform us? How do you talk to your clients about really this journey versus a transformation?
Yeah, I think journey is a great word to start with, but I do think transform is incomplete. I mean, transform really I think points to state change. Change from state A to state B, and it is a more of a continuous cycle. If I could use a simple example, ice is a solid block when it's cold. When the ambient temperature rises, it turns to water, and it's transformed. According to my 8th grade science teacher, anyway, the reality is that the temperature probably is going to continue to rise, and we need to understand that there's another disruption likely to come that we need to be ready for. And so transformation can't be something where it's a reactive action to deal with disruption. It needs to be something that is ingrained in the culture of the company. And so what we talk with clients a lot about is, how do we continuously help you reinvent your business model so that you can be prepared for any disruption that might be coming along the line, and also you can be prepared to adjust course if the particular transformation journey that you're on ultimately needs to change course at some point down the line. I saw something this week I thought was really interesting, and I hate to use them because they're oft used, but Apple, being a fantastic transformative company, I heard this week that their wearables division it didn't exist 5 years ago, and now it could stand alone as a Fortune 140 company. And so if you can just imagine Apple and their continuous reinvention culture. And just this week, they announced that next week they'll be having their next product launch. And you just know that for sure there's going to be something there that's going to create the next wearables division within Apple. And so I think that's the mentality that we try to drive with our clients, really trying to position yourself for that next business model that's going to propel you forward into the future.
That makes a lot of sense. And I always have my calendar set for every Apple announcement, because for some reason, my daughters have to be the first one to buy it. And so I just got to get prepared. So, I think it was something that you said and Michelle said, up front, in terms of how you guys talk about this, right? And how you lead. And I think that is really really at the crux of this, regardless of the change initiative you're going through. And it comes down to leadership. It comes down to how both of you and others here in the audience in leadership positions think about driving these large scale changes. And so, given, maybe you could share a little bit about your personal leadership style and maybe share an example, like a specific example with the audience, and not just what you did, but how you brought about the change inside your organization and really kind of set the tone from a leadership perspective that made it work. Michelle?
Yeah, sure. I'm glad to go. I'm a firm believer in the how being more important than the what. And I've got a few team members in the audience, and they would probably nod their heads and maybe even roll their eyes. But it is what this journey is about. And especially as technologists, we are so zeroed in on that what. But for me personally, my leadership starts with relentlessly driving context. Again, probably annoyingly so, but ensuring that context is understood. Because a key piece of this, and this is probably the second most overused word, empowerment. But if you want to empower your teams, which is what this is going to take to stay competitive, like Paul was talking about here, you have got to move those decisions to where the information is. And, newsflash, it's likely not always with us. More times than not, those small decisions and the decisions that your team can make without you are going to make such a bigger impact than the one big decision we might make as leaders. And so relentlessly driving that context and moving the decisions and creating space for those decisions to be made, I think is a critical piece of this. The other thing that comes to play is, as we're thinking about this, we work in very complex environments. These are not linear decisions. And so we have to, again, create that space and allow some mistakes along the way. So if you wrap that up together, the example I would use was actually in my previous role. We went from mainframe to SaaS. I mean, that's like missing how many generations in between there for doing a modernization. And it was a complete transformation that we went through to change our people management landscape, to change our back office entirety. And so to do that, and to do that with a team that had actually built these applications and built these solutions was the biggest challenge that flies in the face of this. And so what it meant was getting people on board with being okay with taking down, because I needed them, to take down the thing that was likely what put their kids through college and paid for their houses and, had been the highlight of their career, and convince them to go on this journey with me, that there was something better on the other side. And it was relentlessly driving that context and talking about the why, giving people the space to come to it a bit on their own terms. Of course, there were some laggers that we had to get on the train because it was moving. But I think that's a big piece of this is not having the fallacy that you actually make sense the first time you say something, and that it takes some work to get to that point. Putting your ego on the shelf and rolling up your sleeves and coming in and saying, okay, where do you not have clarity? Where did I not make sense? Where does A and B not add up for you? And again, just being able to accept that candor you just asked for. And so I again, don't think it's magic. I think it's about this transparent leadership you have to get comfortable with and really challenge yourself to lead and accept.
Makes sense. Paul, your leadership style and how you think about driving these types of changes.
Yeah, no, I love the transparent leadership. I love the vision that paints. I really think of it similarly to Michelle, so I don't want to be overly repetitive here, but I think setting a clear vision up front of where you want to go is super important. And that's one of the things that we've really tried to do here at Fujitsu, is try to figure out what we want to be, that true North Star, if you will, and making sure we set a clear vision for what that endpoint looks like. And then I think finding the right leaders that can come along with you and really buy into that vision. And it's when I say leaders, it doesn't necessarily mean people managers. It means anybody really in the organization who's capable to lead and to lead by example, if not lead people. finding those individuals that really will buy in and run with you. As well, of course, setting clear goals that will unabashedly attack the goal, the direction and the vision, and won't create any confusion within the organization. I think that's one of the biggest things we've learned at Fujitsu is as much as we want to try to transform year after year, as long as we continue to measure and determine success based on the old activities, we were never able to get the new activities really off the ground where we needed them to be. So really almost cutting yourself off from the old ways of doing things and focusing on only the new has been a real game changer for us in the past few months. And then lastly, I was going to say too, be ready to adjust midstream. And it could be in months, it could be in weeks, it could be in days after you start. Of course, pandemic included, right? You know, those sorts of disruptions in events clearly make change to your plans. So you know, be ready for change and be ready to adjust and make sure that your adjustments are made with still the clear vision out in front of you.
That makes sense. Thank you, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle, you mentioned something when you were talking about kind of the massive move from mainframe to SaaS. And, you know, I think we all believe we've all gone through kind of large scale change or some sort of that you mentioned it has to be collaborative, right? You got to get everyone on the bus. You know, it's got to be collaborative across people and functions and different process leaders coming together. And I think part of what I've found, and I'd be interested in your thoughts, is, you know, the more diversity you can have on the bus, the better, right? And so how do you use and leverage diversity at FedEx to kind of really drive that innovation and change for your organization?
You know, I think it's such a great question, and frankly, it's one I could probably talk on for an hour. But lucky you guys, I'm not. But I'll zoom out for a minute. And so I mentioned FedEx as a technology company, and if you hear banjo, by the way, that is the barking sound that you potentially could hear. He has some apparently really good input on this question. It's just not decipherable by us. But if you think about, so FedEx at the core of what we are a technology company. Back in 1978, our chairman said the information about the package is as important as the package itself. No one said that in 78. Now, fast forward over to the LTL industry. It's an industry from a history perspective that has its roots in a very low margin business that was acquired by FedEx. And so you have this mixing of very low technology, high technology coming together. And so you might wonder, how in the heck does this have anything to do with diversity? And the reason for me it does is because innovation requires mixing these worlds. And it's something that's been in our core ever since, is mixing these worlds of automating a very manual and frankly, white male world. And that's what the trucking industry is all about. It's what the roots are about. And so bringing that, for me, has been just such a fun experience to work on how to solve. And so I think as he's getting rescued, by the way, so we're all good finally. So when you're thinking about that and creating an environment that we have that has this history and this history that we actually need, we need to bring this history and experience with us if we want to transform. We also need individuals with diverse backgrounds. We also need skill sets of the future, and we need the ability to bring all of these together. And so for me, it's been about being very intentional, frankly, very intentional recruitment, creating space once we're actually able to recruit, having the tough conversations and reflections with myself, with my leadership team of who are you mentoring? Are you mentoring people who look just like you and have the same background as you? Because that's easier, because those are the individuals that are going to be drawn to you. Or are you seeking out individuals that have a different background and have the skill set and mindset and reflect the way, one of the big questions I ask, are we reflective of the community we're serving? And so to do that, you have to bring this melding together. And so it's a lot of pieces, but at the end of the day, as leaders, we shadow the way in this space. We do, and our actions are replicated over and over again for good or for worse. And so being very intentional about those actions that we have and challenging the systemic issues that we see and asking ourselves, do we have biases? Being comfortable enough to have those tough conversations of what am I missing? What am I not seeing? We're having a very interesting conversation right now around our hiring practices, and are traditional interviews actually biased? That is a conversation that I think people shy away from. But I have a couple of managers who've been spearheading this, and what a great place to be. What a great place to be having an honest, candid conversation, and then thinking, what do we do in the interim? What do we do about it? And what does this look like in the future? So I don't pretend to have the silver bullet, but what I do know is that when individuals come together and leaders come together and actually recognize a challenge, you can solve it. You can even transform it, maybe.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, if you had the silver bullet, you start selling that, because I think everyone
right now, right?
struggling with how to figure this out, right? And I think there's lots of things people are doing, right? And I think that's the key, is start somewhere. I know, Paul, you guys at Fujitsu have put some stuff in place. Maybe you could share that with the audience in terms of how you're leveraging diversity across your organization.
Well, yeah, and so one of the things I'll say about my industry, the industry I'm responsible for here at Fujitsu, is that by nature, retail industry is really about consumers, and so it would be a really terrible decision on my part to only hire in people of one particular group or segment of the population. And we can gain so much from Generation Z, if we're talking about age diversity, and what their shopping habits are, and how they interact with retailers and direct-to-consumer brands. And then likewise, we gain quite a lot from people who have been in the industry for a long period of time and have a great level of varied success in different areas of either running retail stores, as an example, or running retail IT. So we have a real benefit from a diverse group of people, and what we have found is that when we assemble that perfect group of diverse skill sets, we can really add a lot more value to our clients than we would otherwise. So for us at Fujitsu, we really embrace diverse hiring practices. We've been working on it as an organization with the similar level of focus that I think I'm hearing occurs at FedEx under Michelle's leadership, and it pays dividends for us. We also have really focused on our vitality hiring as well, to try to bring in new and young people into the organization of all backgrounds, so that we can continue to grow. And last, I'll say, in my business, we're a global organization. We have global delivery functions all over the world, and we gain a lot from those interactions as well, and our clients do as well.
No, thanks, Paul. That's fantastic. And as long as you don't stop hiring gray-haired people, we're going to be okay.
So, Sherif, I think that's the cool thing that we're seeing right now, is finding that melding between individuals who are ready to exit, but they don't feel like they've been able to turn it over to anyone just yet. Right. And it's just fire that's been created. I think it's special, and I love watching it.
No, it's perfect.
I totally agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of diversity, though, and I want to hit this point a little bit harder now, because I love the ATW, DFW because it's the only place where I can get to go, and 90% of the audience is actually women leaders. And so, as women leaders in our audience, Michelle, what are some of the tidbits, advice that you could impart, right, to help them specifically think about the personal impact they can make within their organization to drive some of these changes we've been talking about forward?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. First of all, I put on a dress today. I don't know if anybody in the audience can relate, but what was I thinking? They're very restricting now, I'm finding. No, but all joking aside, I would start by asking for a reflection. How do you enter the proverbial room? Do you walk in as a female leader, or do you walk in as a female this, or do you walk in the room as a leader who happens to be female? And the reason I ask that is I think it's something, and I even heard Anne say it earlier, the biggest critic and the biggest person holding us back is the person inside our own heads. And I think at times when we based on how we identify and walk in the room, I guarantee you none of our male counterparts walk into a room and say, I'm a male leader today. It's a baggage that we carry. Can you guys confirm that for me? Confirm it. It's
I'm on board.
A sample of 2, right? But confirm. Yeah. But it's baggage that we carry around, and I think it's powerful to see how you're naming yourself and the baggage that comes with that. Second is I would just encourage you to be vulnerable enough to share what you want in your career, and at the same time humble enough to know you may not know all the options. I can't tell you how many times, and this is another thing I really enjoyed hearing Anne speak about, the lace. I've never heard of corporate lace, but I'm like, okay, I like it. I like the idea and the mental model of that. But I can't tell you how many times in my career, I was talking to a mentor, and many times, rarely did they look like me. And so it was just such a great relationship. And they were giving me advice and telling me about an opportunity or a special project or something that I should consider. And I had no idea it even existed. I had no idea the option was even on the table or that the position was open. And so I think at times just being vulnerable enough to say, here's what I want, or here's what I think I want, is pretty powerful. One of the things I think as women as well, sometimes we'll have our guard up, and we don't always walk through the doors that are opened for us or for others. And we might even encourage each other, like, are you sure? Could even have some suspicion. And so I would just challenge you to think about one of the things I use is the worst thing rule. What's the worst thing that's going to happen to me? Okay, the door may hit me. I'll survive it, and I'll learn something either way, but I might actually get through it. And I think that's one we have to challenge ourselves on. We're in a moment right now that is tough. I can't tell you how many articles I have read over the past 2 months talking about the death of the working mother. And it wasn't talking about the actual person, but of the system in itself. It's a tough time. And so finding moments to find your own humanity and connect on that, I think, is critical. The other thing that's a pretty big basic that is we don't always exercise is setting some boundaries for yourself. Even in the role I'm in, I have a 10-year-old who is doing online learning from our house. We have a very active house at the moment. And in this moment, what I found that I needed to do was have 2 15-minute breaks during the day to check in. So my husband and I, we've worked it out, need to do a homework check. So just the other day, the big boss called me in and he's like, your admin said I couldn't interrupt you. You were doing homework? How's it going? And it was a funny moment. Even I found myself bristling a moment. And I said, yes, I was actually doing a homework check and it's going actually much better. And here's why. And so we ended up in a really good conversation that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't owned that boundary and somehow tried to be a martyr. And the reason I tell you to work on yourself is because until we are confident and own our space, we can't save space for others. And that's a critical piece of this, is being able to use your space to create space for others, spend your political capital to bring in the voice that's not in the room. But you can't do that if you're not owning your own space. And so I think it's just a critical piece of this. But if you're struggling right now, I hear you. I am too. I actually like I said, I put on makeup for you guys. You know, I haven't been looking this put together, but in this moment, that's okay. So hug yourself, find someone who can give you a virtual hug, and, know that you're not alone and we're all in this together, and find ways to continue with your career goals or what's important to you, even though in this moment it may seem impossible. Perfect.
All right. Well, it's time to do Paul's intervention. So we need to figure out a new word to use instead of transformation. This is the lightning round.
Yeah.
So you got 10 seconds. Paul, when you've heard all this, what's the one word you're going to use now instead of transformation?
Well, I mean, I have to say, I said it earlier, I use reinvention a lot, but that would be my preference, but I need some help because I'm not really sure I like that one either.
All
There
right.
must be a different one.
There's got to be one. Michelle,
What do you guys think?
I'm struggling with this one. I'll tell you, we use unstoppable momentum, but it means trigger something in your head. It's 2 words. I'm cheating. But that's the one that seems to get the mental picture to say something's different, but what?
Yeah.
But what? And it's fluid because we know this is a fluid journey.
Unstoppable momentum.
Yeah.
But I'm open. I'm open to this new word.
That'd be a great license plate.
That's what I need, right?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Move
All right.
over. Unstoppable momentum is behind you.
That's perfect. All right. So luckily, the audience has sent us some questions that I'm going to filter to one or both of you. There's still time. So if you're in the audience still and you want to ask one of these fantastic panelists a question, now's your chance. So first, I'm going to send this first one to Paul. Okay. So does transformation ever have an end? You kind of talked about this, right? Or do you find that the journey is constantly changing and it's about adapting along the way? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I said it before, say it again. It absolutely does not end. And if we ever think it does, I think that's it needs to be a wake-up call for any leader or any organization, because it really is a long-term journey, one that hopefully you'll come upon the next reinvention journey that you'll need to go on to continue to build your unstoppable momentum well into the future.
That's perfect.
How was that?
Good. That's good. Michelle, I like this question for you. Sometimes transformation just feels like very expensive to the CEO and the board. I've been there. And so how have you brought, you've done some big things that I'm sure were not cheap. How have you brought kind of your C-suite, your colleagues and the board kind of along the journey without overwhelming them, as you do these kind of massive, unstoppable momentum efforts?
I mean, I think the struggle is real. We've all been involved. So we have a thing called AFP at FedEx. It's not really a thing. It's an unofficial thing. Another fine program. And it's because that's what you're thinking of. You get that exhaustion from it. Personally, where I have focused is getting really intent into painting what that picture is like and doing it in business terms. As soon as I come in and say, we have to retire the mainframe and we're going to move to SaaS, I've lost my audience because they're thinking the exact thing you just said. That's going to be really expensive and never ending. And so instead, I think if you can commit to, here's what I need to get to this viable place, and then I'll give you another choice if we continue or not. And then it's up to you to prove it out. So you can paint the big picture, but you really let them buy in a little bit smaller. And it's never cheap, to your point, but it doesn't have to be. They feel like they have a little bit more of a choice, and you can put up some points. You can put up some really important, impactful points, which just takes me to the point, you can't do this alone. You have to have that business partnership right there, standing beside you, making that ask together and saying, look, I believe in this too. And so I think that's the piece of it is taking exactly what you just said and breaking it down and changing that mental model.
Yeah, no, I needed you next to me in a few of those board meetings because it's, you want to spend what? Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I think that's also been interesting, given actually COVID, I think the thing I saw, and I think Michelle, you mentioned it, the transformation that's occurred in the last 3 to 6 months has basically been like double what it's been the last 5 years when we talk about digital transformation, right? The acceleration of what the pandemic has caused across almost every organization has been phenomenal. Can each of you share some kind of lessons learned, right, about how do you scale digital transformations kind of across national or global scales and quickly that have worked for you guys in your organizations? Paul, you want to start that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously the pandemic has been a major disruption to every business on the planet, and some of them have been able to weather it better than others. And I think that what businesses did a really good job of at first was to really rally around their people and to make sure that they were taking care of the people that have contributed to their success thus far, and make sure that they were able to be safe and to continue to do their job as best they can wherever they were. And so that effort was profound in a lot of organizations, especially those that weren't ready for that kind of change, or for those who needed to make some significant investments in their operations in order to change the health and safety of their workers. But doing all of that effort is the key and underpinning foundational activity that is required in order to then move to the next stage, which is to really scale your transformation to the next degree. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the good people that you have working for you in your company that you've hired, you've brought in, you've trained, and you've helped contribute to your success. So if I were to answer your question, I would say it comes back to people, the importance of ensuring that you have the support of the organization to go and scale the change that you're trying to make.
Perfect. And Michelle, like you mentioned, kind of FedEx was already kind of digitally technology native before the pandemic hit. What was it like for you guys, and how have you thought about kind of scaling your digital transformations as you guys went through this?
Sure. We've been on a 10-year journey for our digital transformation. Again, see, listen to that word. But just like most companies, we've been slingshotted into 2023, and we've been slingshotted into the future of what we predicted. The good news is we saw that there was a major shift coming. The bad news, like most companies, the future arrived faster than anybody expected. So the big shifts we're seeing, I mean, look at e-commerce. How many of you are ordering from your couch or, your dining room table, and the number of boxes that are arriving on your porch are directly indicative to the number of shipments in our environment. And so being able to have those platforms in place and then quickly accelerate has been the key for us. E-commerce is not going anywhere. And so being able to shift from that B2B mindset to have more B2C was the critical piece of our digital transformation. But I agree with Paul too. People were the cornerstone of everything we do. And ensuring that we take care of our people and that we have them in a safety above all mindset, continues to be a driving factor for us.
No, that
It
makes
became
sense.
more important, right?
Yeah, well, and to that point, I think one of the other questions is, how are you guys thinking about talent globally right now? Like, is there new global talent hubs that have emerged because there's more work from home, right? There's more of these virtual opportunities I don't need everyone sitting in one spot. Are you guys thinking about how and where you recruit differently, almost kind of because of the pandemic or as a result of the ability to work like this, where that wasn't the norm before? Maybe Michelle, you can touch upon that one first.
Sure, glad to. So we moved from I shouldn't say small number, probably about less than 5% work from home, to now having 85,000 people working remotely. And to do that, I joke with my team that if I came to them and said, hey, by the way, guys, so starting this week, we're all going to be working from home, they would have looked at me. Could you imagine the change management that would have been required? And we pulled that off in the matter of 2 days. Just that shift of you're here, you're now here, and we will work through how coming back looks like. So definitely we are reevaluating. We're reevaluating when you look at the technology that is available and connects. We had a decent amount and now we have more and we use it better. And so you think about meetings like this and conversations like this, there's richness in the platforms as people are learning to use them. And so we're evaluating both from our existing employee base as well as for how that plays into recruitment and retention long term. I personally believe that the way we work will change. I don't think we fully understand ourselves what we're even going to want in the future. But I do know it's not what I had before. And so what is that, and how far back does the pendulum swing, and what does that look like, and how can we as a company work through to make it actually something that benefits us? And I think that's possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I know that all the dogs of the world are loving this new world. So we get to spend more time with them. But Paul, I mean, you guys have obviously offices around the world as well. And how are you guys thinking about this?
Yeah, so we're a bit in a situation where like my whole team was already remote for the most part, and most of our workforce already worked remotely. So I'll actually answer your question a little bit different from a little different perspective, and that is, how do I envision connecting with clients and prospects? Because that is actually, for me in my business, been the biggest shift that we've had to undergo, and we're really rethinking everything we do from a engagement perspective, demand gen perspective. We're looking at digital platforms for engaging, clients and roundtable type activities. In large part, we're asking clients to spend, tens of millions of dollars with us without actually ever seeing me in person. And, if I were a client, I'd like to see the vendor in person. So, at some point, something's got to give here. And, I think that what we're learning is that now that we're all getting accustomed to this style of working, that it is possible to connect and engage with clients on a deeper and more personal level. And in fact, having calls like these where you can actually see the other person's living room behind them is actually far more personal than it might have been if we had gotten together in Dallas anyway. So if you just kind of reorient yourself towards that, I think things will be okay.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I've seen more people's home offices, garages, and I love the folks that sit outside in their patio, because there's no better place to work than outside. So that's all good. So question came in from Michelle specifically. We didn't share with folks, Michelle, that you started at FedEx as an intern or an analyst, right? When you were 9. Mm-hmm. That was 20 years ago, right? And so, could you share with the audience, how did you manage to really grow in that same organization from, intern or analyst up to the CIO role without having to jump to other organizations like some people believe you have to do? How did you do it? Folks want to know.
It's a great question. It's a great question that I'm not sure I have all the answers to. Well, if you think about it, when you work for a large corporation, I think sometimes there's a lot of negativity put to it. But what people don't always understand is I basically have had 5 careers within FedEx. And so I've moved to different divisions. I've always been in technology. It's my passion. But I've moved to various, very different domains and aspects of that. And I think that was a key piece of just continuing to learn the business. And every time I meet with someone who's an aspiring technology leader, the first thing they hear from me is learn the business, immerse yourself in the business. And they always kind of look at me like, but I thought you were a technologist. And I share that my view of technology is that for a company, we only exist to enable the business. and to innovate for the business. And so having that context really helps. I think the other thing is I was very fortunate to have some great mentors who at times, frankly, kicked my ass. And they really gave me that feedback that I needed, because I did shoot up pretty quick and I needed someone to kind of knock the edges off me at times and to give me that feedback that no one, especially as a high performing female, you don't always get feedback because people don't want to hurt your feelings because they actually think you're delivering really well versus telling you what you really need to hear if you want to make it to the next level. And I was super fortunate to have individuals who were willing and trusted me enough to actually go on that journey with me. And so for me, that's what a lot of this is about, is being vulnerable and finding those people you can trust, knowing that maybe you'll get burned, but that's okay, because again, you'll live from it. It's fine. And finding those individuals and then paying it back when you can. I'm also a big believer of doing the job you have really well. Sometimes we get so focused on the next that we forget to do the thing that we were hired to do. And so I'm a big believer of going all in on what I'm doing and then making sure intentionally to keep those networks and those connections so that when that next thing comes, people know that that's what you're looking for, and you kind of have some scouts out there for you now. There's no magic bullet for that either, but I've been fortunate to be put in a situation to where there was an organization looking for different voices, different leadership faces, and wanted to bring different talent and retain it.
That's great. Well, we are out of time. So I first want to thank Michelle and Paul. Outstanding. I know I got a lot out of this. I know our audience did as well. Thanks to Banjo for piping in as well. We need diversity of all kinds, shapes, forms. So that was fantastic. Luckily, you didn't hear my dog, Jack. So he was, for one Zoom call, finally silent. Amazing. But thank you all again for joining us. Amazing. I know, what is it? Unstoppable momentum is now where we're headed.
That's it.
So with that, I'm going to invite Christy to come back and close out our session. But thank you all for joining. Thank you for supporting the ATW, DFW, and great cause. I'm a proud member of the advisory board and a huge supporter of the organization going forward. So thanks again. Everyone have a great night.
Huge virtual claps. That was awesome, you guys and gal. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Thanks so much, Paul, Michelle, Sherif. You were so much fun. And I want to thank you on behalf of DFW, ATW. We love your support. We really appreciate you. And we are going to be making a donation in your name to the Texas Giving Day, which is next Friday, to the charity of your choice. So we'll be reaching out to you to get what that charity is. We love having you again. Thank you so much. And then to all of our guests, as soon as I turn off presentation mode, please click on back to lobby and join us for the next 30 minutes or so for a little bit further networking. And since this is about as close as we can get right now to each other. So stick around, enjoy us. Hopefully you'll have a virtual cocktail in hand, and we'd love to see you for a few more minutes. Thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you in a bit.
Thank you.